We are back now with a very special guest, co-host for Talkin Giants and Simple Man Radio. Bobby Skinner joins the podcast today. How's it going, man?
Josh, Alex, what's going on, man? I felt bad. I said before, but we were scheduled to go at 6:30 and 6:27. I'm like, I'm not even home right now. My bad, guys. But glad we were able to get it done and do a nice Giant Take podcast. How are you guys doing? It's a couple of weeks before we get any action at all.
Yeah, I mean, it's been quiet, right? It's just like it's kind of like that dead point in the off season. I know, I know you're a Nets fan. I'm a Nets fan, so it hasn't been dead for us.
No, it's been miserable.
It's been miserable.
So the 3 weeks where I'm supposed to just get to enjoy whatever I want has been the Nets just ruining my life. So I'm just hoping there's no Giants that get arrested in the next 3 weeks. You need 3 more weeks and you're good for the rest of the year.
3 more weeks, right? No arrests, no scandals, no anything, and we'll be all set for training camp, hopefully, which is exciting. Obviously, it's back open to the public, so that's going to be really fun. What are your plans for training camp? How many days are you planning on going? Are you going at all? Obviously, you're down in Florida. Right?
Are you guys going to make it at all?
Plans are. Yeah, we're planning on going a couple days.
We're trying to do like a back-to-back thing. Like if it's like one of those 2 days, we go like a Monday, Tuesday. So at least it's like, oh, we have content. Like this guy did this on Monday, and then on Tuesday he didn't do this, something like that.
Yeah, they put it in bunches. Yeah, we're actually going to every single one. Obviously the Fan Fest as well. But yeah, the last 2 years we've been like, training camp is a huge time for us. Like it's just we're putting out constant stuff. And the goal has always been for us to be at training camp, and maybe not every practice in the past, but, a couple years ago, probably wouldn't have been able to pull that off, but just some type sort of training camp. And the last 2 years, it's been miserable as we've been trying to like launch stuff that just hasn't had it. So yeah, I'm pumped, I'm not as pumped to, not be home for 2.5 weeks, but the actual Giants training camp, for me, that's like the most fun time of the year for Talkin Giants. One, because the Giants have been horrible and the season's been bad. But it's a lot of work, but it's like the most fun and less stressful work during training camp. So I'm really pumped to get down there or up there.
Yeah. I mean, we are as well. Obviously, a little 30-minute trip. It's something that bad, even less. But yeah, I mean, we're excited to see them live in action. For us, it's just the worry of getting on that Giants.com site within the 24 hours of July 17th, whenever they're posted. So yeah, I mean, I don't 14th. Know how that works with fans. 14th. See, Alex even has the date ready in his calendar. So
yeah, it's like just like a madhouse for it because people don't know exactly when they're going to go, so they just get as many as they can. But we tried to do, and LPG does it as well, that if people have extra ones, because they will, we try and, put it out there like, hey, if you need 3 tickets for this date or whatever, here you go. So, hopefully they'll be able to do stuff like that.
Yeah. And I mean, if you remember something like that, when Giants Fan Fest, the whole thing was like the New York Giants last season were saying, we're opening it up to everyone. We're making sure everyone gets a seat. And then they're like, Giants Fan Fest is sold out. So, yeah.
In the first 2 hours of it being available, you couldn't get the tickets because there was like millions of people on their website and it was crashing their website. I mean, I remember sitting right here in this seat looking at the laptop being like, come on, like just trying my hardest. And within 5 minutes of them posting it, and that was a total surprise too. At least this year, they give us a heads up, like, hey, these are the days they're going to get it. That was a total surprise, and there was millions. There had to be at least, hundreds of thousands of people trying to get those tickets.
And obviously, you guys were able to make it there, and you sat down and you had the live show with LPG, with Tana, and that was super cool. Alex always likes to look back because Alex, as the injury-prone guy he is, broke his foot or whatever during that summer, and we all ran the lap for our head coach at the time, Joe Judge. So now he makes the joke, oh, I didn't believe in him. I didn't run the lap for Joe Judge, but it's just because he had a broken foot and he couldn't freaking move. So I don't know. He always likes to make that joke. you're not funny, but sure.
I have a rant. I won't spoil it here, but for our Fan Fest live show this year that I'm starting it off with, and it has to do with the Joe Judge lap. And long story short, not regretting it one bit. So Alex, you just have to run a lap this year when you get there. You have to make up for it. Do you believe in Brian? If you believe in Brian Dable, you got to run a lap.
Maybe I'll show up in some cool sneakers or something to honor Brian Dable instead. What is he wearing? Those cement fours or whatever? I'll show up in cement fours. Maybe.
Yeah, that's what it is. We all have to buy Jordans for Brian Dable and support of Brian Dable.
Yeah.
So I mean,
I don't think I have the catch for that.
Same.
That wasn't just one time you were in the MetLife Stadium parking lot recently. We talked to Justin about this when we had him on about a month ago. Andrew Thomas, you interviewed him in a van. As Alex said, it kind of looked like you guys kidnapped him, but you talked to him for a good amount of time. How was that experience talking with the offensive tackle?
Yeah, you said recently, and I had already forgot we had done that. That was cool. So, obviously I do the O-line stuff, so the players that like us the most are O-linemen, specifically the ones we talk good about, like Andrew Thomas, Nick Gates. Nate Solder, probably not a huge fan of me. So we had talked just briefly over the last 2 years, very quick, not asking for anything, being like, hey, proud of what you did this year, blah, blah, blah. And then, so in the game, when the season was over, I was like, hey man, we'd love to get you on the show, either in March or after the draft, because that's when we have our time to do interviews and stuff. And he said he was down. And I was actually going up there. We were supposed to do a charity event, which ended up getting postponed because of weather. It was like a golf charity event. Ended up getting postponed. And this was right around the time I wanted to interview Andrew Thomas anyways. And John Boy Media bought that van. Like they own that van, which you're going to see that at training camp a lot. So I just was like, hey man, like I'm going to be up there. Like you want to, we'll come out into the, record with us out after practice. And he just said yes. So that was pretty cool that he was willing to do that, because he's not like the most outgoing guy in the world either, Like if we were asking Nick Gates, he would have said, yeah. I didn't know. I didn't even know if Andrew Thomas truly wanted to do an interview or if he was being nice. So that was cool that he came out there and he liked us. And I thought it was a pretty fun interview.
Yeah, it was. It was enjoyable to listen and watch.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's not often that you get to, it's not just like he's any random player either. He was probably the best, actually definitely the best player on the Giants last season. Not really saying much.
I know, and that was like doing our first in-person interview was a big deal, but then interviewing Andrew Thomas was a big deal. So now for me, it's like, what's next? So my next big goal is to interview a coach. That could be doubtful Dable. In fact, I wouldn't even want to interview Brian Dable right now. I'd like to see some football and stuff. I want to see some stuff happen, maybe a Kafka or position coach or somebody. So that's next on my bucket list for Talkin Giants, is to get to interview a coach. Because it's like we interviewed some players, like, we could interview more players if we really wanted to, but we try to not do a ton of interviews, try and, pick and choose our spots. So I think next year's hopeful will be Evan Neal. I mean, there's the O-line connection. So I think for next year, we try to do like 2 or 3 player interviews a year. So next year's hopeful for players is probably Evan Neal.
I mean, I think Kayvon would be great because of just his personality for an interview. I think he would be like one of those guys too that would be really fun to talk to.
Yeah, he would definitely have fun with us.
Yeah.
Kayvon's definitely on there.
He would enjoy the van.
Yeah, Kayvon actually probably would love the van. So, but the thing is I want Kayvon to – this is the way we try and do it, is we want those guys to know us before we approach them for an interview, because then they just treat it like a press conference. If you just call or, message them like, hey, man, you want to come on the pod? So that's like we interviewed Brandon Jacobs. We interviewed him with LPG on, not because LPG, needed to be on, but it was like I want him to feel comfortable and know that like we're good dudes to talk to, instead of just being like, hey, I was Super Bowl 42 and it was, it was good. We played hard. I wanted to get some real answers out of him. So that's kind of like our interview, like what we look. That's like a requirement for interviews, is like they have some sort of knowledge of who we are.
So, I mean, you mentioned it already, but Brandon Jacobs, we were going to ask you about that as well. You kind of had the viral clip on there of the interview when he talked about his hatred towards the Dallas Cowboys, which you brought up, which was just absolutely an amazing moment. Because when you hear the players talk about their hatred towards teams like fans think of towards those teams, it kind of gives you like a full circle moment. So that was really cool.
Yeah, and like who on the Giants hates the rivals right now? You know, like who do we know for damn sure hates the Eagles or hates the Cowboys? You really don't know. Partly because the Giants have sucked and there hasn't really been a rivalry. You know, and then with Jacobs, it was like that clip you mentioned. Like that was me kissing. Like my favorite like celebration ever is Brandon Jacobs, throwing the ball as hard as he can at the play clock. Like I thought that was sick. That was in the playoffs, just bringing like the intensity. So we got some good stuff out of Brandon Jacobs. That was a pretty fun interview.
Yeah, I mean Brandon Jacobs, he was always one of my favorite Giants players. You know, we've always been talking about, right, when, next to Saquon, like we need that Brandon Jacobs type player. We've never really gotten it. So it's kind of like he's still that guy for the Giants. And, he hasn't played in however many years now. I don't even know, 8-10 years. But yeah, I mean, it's funny, but I love that clip about him because you're right. No one really has that grit, that passion anymore. It feels like that they're really playing for the Giants, I guess, and, hatred of the Eagles and Cowboys. I think the closest you got to that was probably when the Eagles threw that game in 2020 with, oh my God, who did they play? What was that quarterback?
Nate
Sudfeld. Against Washington.
Gosh,
yeah, Nate Sudfeld.
Nate Sudfeld, yeah.
Nate Sudfeld. Yeah, I think that was but that was more like online and you like Giants players commenting on Twitter and stuff, and that's kind of like the most you saw. And maybe some beef afterwards in the games that came net the following year. But I mean, yeah, that's basically it. There's not like that same rivalry anymore. It seems like, but hopefully, we get back to that very much soon.
I would say like the only player that is Darius Slayton, like who has that social media presence, especially on Twitter. Doesn't voice his opinions towards certain teams, but definitely is always active on Twitter, especially the most Giants active player on Twitter. I want to say tweets wise.
Unless I feel bad for him now. I always do feel bad for players on social media when they're not in the good graces of the fan base. And look at any Darius Slayton tweet, and the replies are like, "Catch the ball, you bitch!" Like it's just constant like people berating. It's like this. Let the guy use social media. Like we don't need you to try and teach up his hands.
Yeah, it's not like that's going to help, right? He's not going to become better at catching the football because you're roasting him on Twitter.
Yeah, it's just truly being a jerk when you do that. Like even the Evan Ingram at his lowest, I was like, the guy had to turn his Instagram comments off. Like, leave the guy alone. Like, he's not dropping the balls because he is bored that day. Like, he's trying. It's one thing if a guy's a jerk back. Like, if a guy's a jerk back, he's talking trash, then it's fair game. But guys like Slayton and then it's like, man, just let the guy tweet about pizza in New Jersey or whatever.
And they're human beings, right? It's like, they know what's wrong. Like Darius Slayton knew how bad it was when he had that drop against Washington.
Yeah.
Evan Ingram knew how bad that drop was against Philly, right? It's not like these players are like oblivious to the situation. It's not like we have to tell them all what's going on, what's wrong with their game. They're all professionals. They know. Speaking of a professional whose career is starting to wind down, I guess, a little bit now, Chris Mara demoted. Did you see that coming? I mean, I assume not, because I don't think anyone saw that coming. Joe Shane's really the head of the ship now, the captain of the ship, it seems, with that move.
That was really surprising. Like I was very surprised at that because obviously Chris Mara is part of ownership. I'm sure people in the past have maybe wanted him to move out. So now this is where John Mara pushes back on the stuff. It's like, well, Chris isn't that involved. Well, it's like, well, one, he is involved, even though he may not be, he's not a big decision maker, but he's part of the player personnel side, putting in scouting reports and stuff, like filing that with the team. Like that's always going to hold more weight with, the GM because you are ownership. Like your opinion is going to matter more whether it should or not because you're ownership, whether that's good or bad. The Cowboys, with Stephen Jones and like they, and Jerry, like it's worked out for them. They're good at it, but it's always going to hold more weight than that. So I was very surprised that they moved him out of player personnel. Like I'm super intrigued. I wish some of the reporters would have done some digging on this of like how that happened. Like, I don't think, did Chris Mayer, bring this up? Did this was the most heat that Chris Mayer probably got was this past year. How did this come about? That's what I'm fascinated by, and I don't know if we'll ever get a good answer on it.
And then I guess this is an odd transition, but speaking of another professional, in your field with John Boy Media and Talkin Giants. Well, I'll say it, okay?
You make $500,000 a year, don't you?
Well, over $500,000.
Over. Sorry,
I never have given out the exact amount. It's just over $500,000.
Over $500,000.
Well, don't get too excited because
there's a few people who believe that. Like there's people being like,
yeah. I mean, I see the Twitter comments.
You really shouldn't flaunt your wealth. It's like, come on, like leave me alone, okay?
Okay, so I was gonna bring up not a highlight of the career, but I guess just an unfortunate occurrence, which is during the Giants and NFL draft live streams this past year. There were players that were picked by the team. For us, it was Wan'Dale Robinson right bright and early in the second round, which we were live for that second round, and Alex had a wonderful reaction of who, just repeatedly like saying that for about a minute straight. And for you, Bobby, it was more like, oh my God, I don't know enough about this player type reaction. So
yeah, it was, I kind of hated the way that came out, but in the moment it was frustrating.
Yeah.
Cause it's like, we spent so much time prepping for the draft, like so much time. It's ridiculous. And part of me thinks maybe I should like shorten the amount I spend on each player and just kind of get a general basis for them. But it's like but part of me wants to like be confident in what I'm saying and not just doing a quick walkthrough on a guy. And this past year with the coaching and GM search, it put us back like a month. So we weren't able to. It's like you do 140 guys, and then it's like didn't do this guy, didn't do this guy, didn't do this guy. So next year I'm not gonna. I'm gonna work my ass off on it, but on draft night I'm not gonna stress about it because you know what. 99% of people who cover the Giants don't actually know about the guys, and we'll just work our asses off afterwards to try and figure out who Cordell Flott is.
Yeah, I mean, I got to be honest. I've never agreed with something or kind of connected with something you've said so much because I'm sure I did nowhere near the prep that you did for the draft, right? You or Justin or anyone on the Talkin Giants group, but. It felt like, I still put a decent amount of my time in, at least it felt like. And then when Wan'Dale Robinson was picked, and I was like, I've literally never heard of this guy. I maybe heard of him once, seen him in the mock drafts, and it was so frustrating. So I definitely understand that point. It was very infuriating. Funny enough, I knew who Cordell Flott was, actually. Wow. Out of all the picks, I knew who he was.
We knew Wan'Dale, but we didn't really put any stock in Wan'Dale because it's like, you have Shep, who's like better in the slot. Tony, who can play on the outside, but plays a lot in the slot.
Mm-hmm.
And he's 5 foot, he's really short. So that's another thing. And there was a lot of receiver might be the position we looked at receiver and interior offensive line, like guards and centers, was probably the position I did the most research on. And Wan'Dale was just we looked at him, but just wasn't on our radar. And then luckily Azudu, literally, I got to watch it on Josh Azudu an hour and a half before round 2 started, So, and part of me wanted to be lazy and just, they're not going to draft this guy. But there was some rumors that he was they liked him from their top 30 visits and stuff. So, we had a little bit of a watch on Azudu, but wasn't super confident in my opinion on him.
And then looking at our fourth round. Oh, go ahead, Alex.
Oh, sorry about that. I was just going to say that Azudu and then pretty much all the picks on day 3, I had almost no idea about. It was just Flott and then our 2 first-round picks that I knew about. And the only reason I knew about Flott was because I watched a lot of Derek Stingley, and that's basically how I found out about him. So That was basically it for me. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know Flott. Didn't know Belton. Knew Bellinger. Bellinger was actually another one that I watched the day before the draft. Like one of my last watches, because I had watched basically all the tight ends except for Bellinger because I didn't have the coach's film on him. So I just watched like a broadcast version of him late. And then Dane Belton, I was pissed off at. I literally had Dane Belton film downloaded on my computer. I just never watched him, and I don't download. Like I download it when I need to watch it and then delete it. I downloaded it because he was mocked to the Giants in like the 5th or 6th round, like a couple weeks before, and I had never watched him. Knew Darian Beavers late, and then the rest of the guys I didn't know until we ended up watching them afterwards.
Yeah, and I mean, speaking of Daniel Bellinger, taking over tight end 1, the position there. Obviously, the Giants made some signings this offseason in the tight end spot. I think they brought in Jordan Akins. They also brought in the guy who, oh my God,
Ricky Seals-Jones.
My head, I can't. Thank you. Do you think in the beginning of this season, Bellinger can like come out of training camp and be the tight end 1, or do you think it can happen eventually over time throughout the few weeks of the season, or not even at all?
It'd be interesting to see how the coaching staff is willing to let young guys play right away. Some coaching staffs are not. Like Pat Shermer, that was one of my gripes with him, is that he was not quick to throw young guys in. But if there's any guy who's, not Kayvon Thibodeau and Evan Neal who should like be starting quickly, it's Daniel Bellinger, because Ricky Seals-Jones is, he's athletic. He can make some plays, but he's he's a worse blocker than Evan Ingram. So you can't really trust him, and he's never put up, he's not a great route runner. Like he's not a good starting tight end. And then Jordan Akins is the same. He's not a good, really a great tight end either, but again, athletic and, can stretch the field a little bit, but he had Deshaun Watson as QB and never really put up any numbers. So Bellinger has has the pathway to do that. He can block, although I do worry that he'll have some issues starting off. As a blocker, I think he's a solid route runner. He could shoot with the ball a little bit. He catches the ball well. It's all like one, perfect motion. So I'm excited about Bellinger. I tell myself like 4th round tight end, don't get too excited right away, but I can't help. I'm very excited to watch Daniel Bellinger, and I hope he is a starter week 1.
Yeah, I mean, I hope so too. I'm a fan of his from the tape I watched after the draft, of course, because like we were mentioning earlier, didn't know about him. Besides the tight end position, obviously that's like the main battle I think a lot of people are going to look at. What's another camp battle that you're going to be excited to see, obviously in person when you go to training camp?
Shane Lemieux versus Azudu or whoever else is battling for left guard, because Shane Lemieux is somebody who, got injured all last year, but he's not someone I've written off. Like he had a bad rookie year as far as pass blocking, was a good run blocker, and then got hurt to start. And it was only like 18 or 19 reps, but he actually looked good in those reps versus Denver, but not enough sample size to really be definitive. But it's like I loved him as a 5th round pick. Like I thought that was a really good pick for Dave Gettleman, and I still do. So I'm excited to see. Like I think Shane Lemieux can be a solid starter in the NFL. They drafted Josh Azudu, but they don't need to rush Azudu in. I really like Shane Lemieux, and I'm excited. I'm excited for him. So that left guard battle is probably the one I'm paying attention to the most. And then on the other hand is, if Shane Lemieux is struggling, how well is Josh Azudu coming along? Like, could he start week 1, or are they still going to like take him along slowly?
And then I have a question on is, if the Giants right now have 3 cornerbacks on the field at once, right? Would you say it's Flott, Adoree Jackson, and Darnay Holmes? Like, where does Aaron Robinson fit into that?
I think Aaron Robinson's
injured, right, most of last year?
Sorry. I think Aaron Robinson is going to be the second outside corner. I think it's going to be Adoree, Aaron Robinson, and then Holmes in the slot. Flott, I don't know how quick you could rush him in. The reason I'm not excited for that is because of all the reasons we just said. That's not a fun battle. That's like a who sucks, how good can Aaron Robinson be? Like, that's to be known, but he's going to be playing the outside most likely, which he didn't do at UCF. He didn't do last year for the Giants. So that'll be interesting to see. Cornerback is a position like I'm the most worried about for the Giants, and that's a position that if you're bad at can just destroy a team. Like you can have a good offense. If you have bad corners, you're probably going to be a really bad defense.
Yeah, we still have nightmares about Isaac Yadam. I mean, he was terrible. I remember that phase of Giants play. What it was, maybe he was there for a few weeks. Those were some tough weeks to watch in the secondary.
Even Yadam, like Patrick Graham, made playable, but that was the defense he played, which is very different from what Wink Martindale's going to do. Where Wink Martindale's going to put these guys out on an island. You know, if Patrick Graham was the defensive coordinator, I would be a little less worried. Now, again, Wink Martindale's going to bring pressure, and he's going to bring the party to the offense instead of the other way around. So it's kind of like a different strokes for different folks type thing. So, yeah, that's going to be really interesting to see how Wink Martindale handles having that cornerback personnel.
And I always say about Cordell Flott, he's got the size in terms of the height and the arm length. If he can bulk up a little bit, get a little bit more muscle, I think he has the potential to play on the outside. That's kind of what I thought when I was watching some of his tape. And I think if he's able to, bulk up a bit, I think there's a possibility he could be decent on the outside as well.
Yeah, he's got like the body and the athletic ability that best fits that out of him, Robinson and Darnay Holmes. Darnay Holmes just flat out can't play on the outside, and Robinson might be able to. But Flott, he's long, he's really quick. He bursts out of his, he got good change of direction, bursts out of his back pedal, and he gets really involved in the run game and stuff. So yeah, Flott has like the best just ability. It's just how good does he like look year one, and how does he develop? And cornerback's such a tough spot to project. You see guys who go in the top 5 bust all the time. DeAndre Baker was a great man coverage corner at Georgia. He's not only did he have his own legal issues, but like he hasn't been able to get playing time for the Chiefs or anybody. So it's just a position that is really tough to Eli Apple. It's a position that's hard to translate into the NFL.
Now, as you are an offensive line guy for our brand new right tackle here in Evan Neal, what would you say the main thing that he needs to improve on in order to become an elite, or what you would call quote unquote elite tackle in the NFL?
In the pass game, I think he can do a little better, protecting the edges, but I think he's going to be a solid pass blocker from day one. In the run game, he could use a little more balance. He's a really good prospect. Like it's really hard to nitpick. Like, if I talk about Cave on, there's some things I can look at. With Neal, man, he's really polished as a player. Like, he's got good sets, just maybe, timing the punch and stuff like that better. But there's no like huge things he needs to work on. Like, you guys know, I loved Andrew Thomas. I thought he was the best tackle in 2020. But I also was one person like he needs a lot of work. But that's also why I liked him. It's like he needs a lot of work with his technique, but he's produced the best out of all these other guys with the need for that work. That's why I loved Andrew Thomas so much. So I was just like, hey, if this guy's a hard worker, he's going to be really good. Where Evan Neal doesn't need a ton of work. It's just getting used to that NFL speed, protecting the inside a little better. Some stuff that he needs to polish up. Not he doesn't need to rework his pass, his footwork, doesn't need to rework his punch. It's just kind of getting better at those things.
So you did mention earlier how it's like kind of like the dead point here in the off season before everything kind of ramps up in about 2 weeks. So I promised my co-host Alex here, and you guys already kind of talked about this in the beginning, he couldn't contain himself, that I would give him a couple minutes to talk to you about the Nets. And your franchise as you're about to lose your 2-star players. So, Alex, I give you the floor to take over.
I need this. I need all the Nets conversations to rant as I can take. So I'm glad for this.
I mean, the Nets, it's just like, I don't even know where to start. I mean, because it seemed like we weren't going to re-sign him. We signed Kessler Edwards.
I didn't see that.
I was working. Right, I was happy about that.
I was surprised they didn't just sign him from day one, but that's good to see. I don't know what's happening. I mean, I think as much as like it makes sense for Kevin Durant to stay and Kyrie Irving to stay, but Joe Tsai, I hate him. He has just way too big of an ego to be running an NBA team. Like, you can run all your business, but it's a stars league. But I'm also pissed off at everybody. Like, I'm pissed off at Kevin Durant. Like, dude, you just signed an extension. You said this is where you're going to play, and you're going to leave at like at the first sign of some adversity. In fact, Kyrie Irving's the guy I'm the least mad at. like Kyrie Irving is a big part of this. A lot of this stuff wouldn't be happening if Kyrie, got vaccinated and stuff. But at the same time, it's like Kyrie is the only person out of all these guys who just wanted to play for the Nets. Like that was the big gripe with Kyrie and Nets ownership, was Kyrie wanted a max deal to play for the Nets. I understand he's not the most trustworthy guy in the world, and he's definitely a big part of blame, but he's actually the guy I'm least mad at in all of this. Joe Tsai needs to get rid of his ego and try and fix this, whatever it takes. Kevin Durant needs to grow up and stay with this team, and not like any team he goes to is not going to be better than what the Nets are right now. They're not going to have a better chance at a title, because they're going to get ravished. Like the Raptors seem like the likeliest spot, and then you get Scotty Barnes, and I always forget how to pronounce this guy's OG Anunoby.
OG Anunoby.
Yeah, and then picks. So it's like, is a team with Kevin Durant, Pascal Siakam, and Fred VanVleet better than what the Nets are right now? No. The Suns,
no.
Like, I don't think the Nets are going to accept the Suns trade, because the Suns trade sucks. They don't want DeAndre Ayton. If you're not giving up Booker, it's nothing. And then it's just like wherever Kevin Durant's going to go is not going to be a better basketball situation for him than with the Nets right now. And that's all I care about, is getting a title. One title. I've been, I'm a lot older than you, Alex. I've been rooting for the Nets my whole life. It's been a miserable existence. It's the one sports team where before they got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I was kind of resigned to the fact that they're never going to win a ring. The NBA is too hard to win a ring. You got to be, huge market, blah, blah, blah. Obviously the Nets are in New York, but they just don't have that huge fan base. So I just kind of was resigned to it. Like I
so much right now. Look at us.
In my mind, I was like, you know what? The best moments of being a Nets fan is going to be the Jason Kidd years. Like the one that got away is always going to be, 2003 Game 6 of the NBA Finals. We're up by double digits the entire game, and the Spurs going on a 19-0 run with 8 minutes left in the game. Like that was going to be the highlight of my Nets fandom. And it's just, they got Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. It's like, okay, they're going to get a title. They're going to get a title. And they would have in 2020, by the way. Like, they were the best team in the NBA by far. They would have won a title, like, kind of easily that year. Then Harden goes down in game one, the first minute of the game. It's like, okay, we're still winning this. And, like, dominate them in the first two games. And then Kyrie steps on the ankle, and that was the end of that season. But that team was, like, the champions. Like, it was, like, they were dominating the Bucks, who won the championship.
Durant's foot was a little bit freaking smaller.
I'm looking at the spot where I just was like on my, the 3 to go to overtime. Like I had given up all hope. The 3 to overtime brought me back to life, and then overtime just sucked the life right back out of me. That was a miserable night. That Game 7. So yeah, I thought I was gonna get a championship as a Nets fan. That's all I wanted was one. I didn't need to like Kevin Durant or Kyrie Irving and be huge fans of them. I just wanted one time to feel feel what it likes to be a champion for NBA, which is like the Nets are my second favorite team. After the Giants, like they're the team that would bring me the most joy for a championship after the Giants. So I just thought I was going to get that opportunity, and now I'm realizing that that's probably never going to happen. But with all this stuff, what I'm hoping for happens. What I'm hoping happens that if they trade Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving, I still wish they could figure it out and just keep them, because it's better up. Like I don't care about being a 4 seed and not winning the title. I just don't care about that anymore as a Nets fan. I did. It was fun in 2018, but now that's over. I'm hoping that they can trade Kevin Durant to the Raptors, get Scotty Barnes, OG Anunoby, and then use those picks and Ben Simmons to trade for Donovan Mitchell. I know people aren't as high as Mitchell as they were probably 2 years ago, but I think Donovan Mitchell's the truth. And I honestly think the Knicks should trade all those picks for Donovan Mitchell. I truly think Donovan Mitchell can be the best player on a championship team. Like, that's a hot take right now, but I really do think he's that dude if he really dials in. And, he didn't want to be in Utah. Second best player was a guy who didn't really perform well in the playoffs, didn't translate in Rudy Gobert. So I just went for 5 minutes straight, and you can see how much all the Nets have just built up all this anger and frustration inside of me.
Yeah. And now I'm going to talk about the Nets for 5 minutes. So get ready, Josh. Buckle in your seatbelt. I just feel like it's frustrating because Kevin Durant, like you said, he's not going to find a better situation than he has right now. The only place that could possibly be that is the Warriors. And if he goes back to the Warriors, then he just looks silly. So I don't think he's going to do it.
And I think that's smoke,
I don't think
too.
he's going to go back there.
Yeah, like you, I don't believe that's happening. That's the only team that's been brought up that I just don't think that's happening.
Nah, he would look. It would ruin his whole legacy forever, right? Even if he moved to the Raptors or the Heat or the Suns, it wouldn't ruin his legacy. I think if he moved to the Warriors, he went back to the Warriors, that would be it for him. But it's just, I don't understand Joe Tsai, Sean. I don't even think it's Sean Marks' fault, actually. I think it's really just Joe Tsai and Kevin Durant who are really just screwing this whole thing up. But if they can figure out how to get all these pieces together, you look at our roster right now, signing T.J. Warren for the minimum. People are making fun of us. Josh was making fun of me, whatever it was, 2 days ago when it happened. He's like, T.J. Warren's going to save you. I'm like, as the eighth best player on a solid team, as a nice role player, he could be pretty good. I mean,
and that's what the Nets needed was wings. They got Royce O'Neal and TJ. Like, they needed wings. That's what they didn't have last year. They were just too small.
Yeah.
You get Joe Harris back. I don't know how you feel about it, Alex, but I have no hope for Ben Simmons. Like, you don't ever hear me bring up Ben Simmons as a Nets fan because I just don't know if he's ever going to, if he's going to play, and forget the back injury. Have we forgotten that series that ended it all in Philly? Like, how pathetic that was? That was pathetic. So, I bring up a lot of things with the Nets, but I never really I would like Simmons to be moved. Not for nothing, obviously, not just for the sake of it, but I would love to get, whatever the best package is for Ben Simmons.
I would even take a package where you get a really solid role player. Not necessarily a superstar like Donovan Mitchell, but I can't think of a person right now, but a solid player who could, give us who's a starting caliber, maybe a really good sixth man type guy who would really help this team, because you can't have Simmons and Claxton on the floor at the same time. You can't have there's so many combinations. He just screws everything up. Even with the Kevin Durant trade, he screws things up. It's just annoying.
Yeah, I'm okay with keeping Simmons if we have Kevin Durant and Kyrie, because obviously that defense is needed. There's not going to be much emphasis on his scoring. But if we move Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving and Ben Simmons is our best player, this is literally what I was making fun of Sixers fans for a year ago.
Yeah, I would agree. Donovan Mitchell, I don't know why the Knicks haven't traded for him yet, to be honest. I would give everything. I agree with you. He's good. I don't think he's best player on a championship, but he's really, really, really great number 2, in my opinion. I don't know.
Yeah, I just think Donovan Mitchell's the truth. I just think, I'm not saying for sure he's the best player on a championship team, but I wouldn't be surprised. We see guys where it's the stock might fall them a little bit, but all it takes is one playoff run. What was it, 2 years ago when he went up against, Denver and Jamal Murray? He was balling. And that's the thing I kind of like about Donovan Mitchell too. In the playoffs, he shows up the most. So I'm just a big Donovan Mitchell fan in general. He's one of my favorite young players in the league.
There's a guy I'd trade Simmons for, Jamal Murray. Feel right? He didn't play last year. Maybe his value's down a bit. I would trade him for not that would ever. I don't think Denver would do that, but with Jokic, he stretches the floor. Who knows? Maybe Simmons works out there.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I'm Sean Marks pitching trade ideas to people, but frustrating.
This was fun, guys. I mean, hearing about your team.
I don't think so. I think it's miserable talking about the Nets right now, Josh.
It's not much better in Knicks land, okay? You guys got Jalen Brunson. I just read something today that he's the first player to be paid $100+ million contract without ever being an All-Star.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's terrible. Let me speak now. I'm sorry that our offseason actually worked according to plan, that we traded our first round picks and we traded Burks and Noel for absolutely nothing, even gave the Pistons cash. We gave them cash, all to sign Brunson. Yeah, we actually signed him. Our offseason plans worked. For you guys, I know it's absolutely opposite. So
no, I agree, Josh. This is the best offseason in a long time for the Knicks because it's a bad one for the Nets, and that's really all that Knicks fans have now is for the Nets to be bad. That's the only thing they get pride and joy in at this point.
The only thing they care about.
It's, I don't understand. Now, there's a difference because I laugh at, I laugh about it. I called Alex immediately when Kevin Durant requested a trade.
I was in Costco. I almost broke down in tears.
And what was sucked is the Kyrie.
People were looking at me in Costco and they're saying, "What the hell is wrong with this guy? Why is he crying right now?" And
well, you had the Kyrie Irving drama, and then it's he opts in. It's all right, baby, we got another year, and then it's 24 hours later, it's Kevin Durant's demanding a trade. It's oh my god, it's I stressed all week, got to enjoy it, and then there it goes.
It was more. I don't know. I don't feel like I'm Alex. I know you think I'm bad just because you're a Nets fan. There are worse Knicks fans out there. Yes, I celebrate the Nets' losses. I think it was the piling on of us having a successful. This is what we came out to do. We signed Brunson, plus the same day, 2 hours before Kevin Durant requested a trade. So it's a perfect day for me. But yeah,
I agree. That's a perfect day for the Knicks fans.
The way you were just, for the people listening, the way, Bobby, you were just sitting with just absolutely the most plainest face. That I should make that again.
I used to not hate the Knicks. Knicks fans made me hate the Knicks because it's anyways, I'm not doing the whole thing.
Exactly.
Oh, me? Is that what you're saying?
Not as much you,
because of
Josh,
me, you hate the Knicks?
But it's anytime I tweet about the Nets or something, it's I get my mentions get filled with Knicks fans. It's we get it. You have more fans. Congratulations. Hang the banner.
and I mean, the Knicks fans right now that are completely celebrating, I said on my Knicks podcast, I was calm down. You got to remember, this is Jalen Brunson. This isn't the Stephen Curry. He's not the best point guard in the NBA.
This isn't a top
He's
12
debatable
point guard in the NBA.
Right. I was debatably top 10 if you think crazy, but
he has the upside to be, but
yes. So what I was saying was, you brought in Brunson not to make the playoffs and go for a finals run. You signed Brunson to 4 years, hoping that in the next couple of years you can develop a team with your young guys and maybe trade for another person. I don't know if they're going to do it this offseason, maybe next offseason, but I just think there's upside to the Knicks, and I think Knicks fans are going a little too crazy. Maybe if we make it to the playoffs, it's a good year. I mean, this isn't really we don't have a playoff team, but it's just we had a better offseason so far than the Nets did, and that I can celebrate because, as you know, the Knicks offseasons in the past, Bobby, you make a point. They have been absolutely horrendous. I mean, this is signing Julius Randle. I think that was last offseason to the whatever. Max deal.
How predictable was the turning on Julius Randle? He got hyped up so much.
I mean, it was.
I didn't. I don't tweet about it too much because I understand my followers are mostly Knicks fans. I don't feel like making them despise me. But privately, I'm I know for a fact this time next year the Knicks fans are going to hate Julius Randle, and that has happened.
He was worse last year, but he wasn't that much worse, right? I make fun of him just because
Alex,
but he wasn't that much worse.
He was bad. He was bad. He
was what he was his entire career, except for 1 year.
Makes a great point. And I don't know what they're gonna do, especially with the whole rumor. It's sort of like Kyrie, but I don't know. I don't know if there's a good comparison because he was on the team last year with trade talks going on during the season, and him saying he wants out, and all these reporters are do you not want to be here? Do you not? And a report was coming out every other week that Randall wants out of New York. I'm shocked that he's still on the team at this point. It's actually crazy to me that he's still on the team with all these rumors that happened during the season. And now I'm expecting him to go out there and try it all for these Knicks fans. I don't even know if he wants to be here right now. So there's Knicks problems too. It's not just you guys, but
just cry after the episode. It'll be fine. Yeah.
Well, I don't have 2 star players wanting to leave my team, so
yeah, you don't have 2 stars.
You guys don't have any star players. That's what I always keep saying.
Both teams drafted the same player. It's perfect. It's great. All right.
Wait, did we say it at the same time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, you just said it.
I mean, Josh put it on a tee for us.
All right, we're past the 45-minute mark. Go host on Talkin Giants at Civil Man Radio. Follow him on Twitter at _Bobby_Skinner. Bobby, thank you so much for coming on today. Man. Always a blast. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, guys. Glad we could get it done. Talk a little Giants, and then rant about the Nets, and then talk some shit on the Knicks. It was a good time.
Yeah.